I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're diving into Why Bother Asking? Unexpected Keys to the Kingdom of Connection by Peter Parnegg. In this insightful book, the author shows us how asking the right questions can unlock deeper connections in both business and personal life. Drawing from his extensive experience as a CEO and international speaker, he reveals the power of conversations and how they hold the key to success. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Atticus Publishing for helping us put him in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support authors like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his amazing book. The links are below this interview. Peter, great to see you here today on Spotlight.
Logan, thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here. I'm excited.
I'm excited to have you on the show. As a journalist, I know the importance of questions and asking the right questions to get out the right information. What made you decide to focus upon the empowering nature of questions?
It started as I've been in the real estate business for most of my career, and I've owned and operated the largest real estate company in New Mexico for decades. And what I discovered repeatedly is everybody in the sales world was always worried about getting leads and converting sales and all the things that we don't like about salespeople, salesy, pushy, manipulative. And in trying to crack the code originally around sales, where it started, it's how can we be better salespeople? And the key is to quit selling. As Where I do now is we have a phrase: everybody loves to buy and nobody likes to be sold. And so how we could do that in what I would call a kind, a holistic, a gentle, compassionate human way, rather than oh, here comes the salesman.
Right.
Really inspired me to say, wait a second, people like to do business with people that they know, they like, and they trust. And so how do I create connection is really, that's where it got to. And it became really clear. You've heard all these are all cliches, but they matter. Be interested rather than interesting. And all of a sudden, the best conversation I've discovered is the one where you don't do much talking, you do ask a lot of questions. And at the end, the person says, "You're such a great conversationalist." And it was because I didn't say anything, because
Exactly.
people
Exactly.
like to hold the stage. So anyway, to really finish the answer to your question, I started experimenting with better ways to connect with customers originally, by asking better questions, a better series of questions, more meaningful questions that mattered to them. And then what I really started to notice is that almost everybody I know at some level struggles to make connections, whether romantic, with their children, with their partners, with business colleagues. And I discovered this is a much bigger issue than how to sell more stuff.
Yeah.
And so it was like, wait a second. All you have to do is watch any TV show and look at it through the lens of, are those two characters connecting or not? And they almost never connect when one person is downloading and talking. And now every time I watch a TV show, I go, ask him that question. And you can see, if we can get better at drawing people in at a technical level and at a sort of a holistic spiritual level, we just have a more fulfilling series of interactions, which ultimately I think leads to more fulfilling life.
Exactly. Exactly. I feel like every relationship, whether it's personal or professional or familial, um, is kind of the same in many, many ways. It's all about communication. So the dynamics that you saw in sales also pertain to love relationships and family relationships and friendships and so forth. And I think that's true. So how do we become a better questioner or listener or combination thereof?
So I coined a term in my book called a questionnaire, with a capital Q. And the goal is to become a better questionnaire. And so I don't know if this is sadly or accurately, there is technique involved. And when I finally realized, to get better at anything, you have to study technique, whether it's golf or skiing, or how many books are written on marriage, it is technique. And it starts with I identified 10 basic skills. And if I hear one more person on an interview say, you have to be a better listener, it's like, well, yeah, fine. It's like, and when somebody says, how do you become a better golfer? And the joke is hit the ball fewer times. Well, yeah, terrific.
Yeah.
So it really becomes down to some mechanical things like how do I make a conversation or help a conversation move forward rather than end. And you're a journalist, so you know the five W's and an H, who, what, why, where, when, how. That's fine. But I have a couple of, I think, keys for me, which started with the next question is embedded in the last answer.
Mm.
Most of us, and this is a Stephen Covey quote, most of us listen with the intent to reply rather than to understand. And all you have to watch during the election cycle, there is no questioning and listening. It's the whole time you're talking, whether I'm an interviewer on any station, it's I'm just going to pounce on what you just said. So I'm formulating my reply during the entire and which means I don't hear half of what you say.
Right.
Um, and so that's why you watch these, what I would call just frustrating, non-informative conversations, because it's attack, defend, attack, defend. I have
Right.
another belief. Can we learn to not defend our position? In other words, when somebody attacks, rather than gearing up for how do I defend myself, instead go, well, Logan, you just told me that often I don't listen very well. Instead of going, well, the truth is I'm listening, but we naturally
Right.
move to defend rather than saying, well, Logan, tell me a little bit more about what you observed, which which first of all takes the courage to not defend yourself and the willingness to hear the truth, both of which are really scary. A lot of
Right.
times I don't really want to know, and in a partnership like a marriage, this is the money move. When you're under attack by your partner, instead of getting ready to reattack or counterattack, go, you've obviously there's a nerve that's been touched here. Tell me more about how I don't do that. Um, and that changes the dynamic profoundly, and we just don't do it, especially with our children.
Exactly, exactly. I find that asking the person questions about themselves is one of the best ways to foster a dialogue, a communication, and a relationship. People like talking about themselves. So
Yep.
if you're in a job interview, for example, and you start asking the boss about his or her journey, I think you're going to get a lot more mileage and traction than if you just talk about your own experience.
100%. Yep.
Yeah.
Sounds like you've done this before.
Once or twice. Yeah,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
exactly.
And what's funny is parts of this are intuitive. And then I think what happens under pressure when we're nervous, we collapse a little bit. And because we know, I mean, if I were interviewing you, it'd be like, of all the movies you've been in, tell me one or two of the ones that excited you the most. And one of our skills is to develop a series of what we call opening questions, like in chess, an opening gambit. Because oftentimes, if you've met somebody you're just new to, you ask them like, "How you doing?" Great. What's up lately? Not so much, and you have no traction and no connection.
Right.
Um, and what you're saying is exactly right. It's well, and we use the mnemonic Ford questions about your family, occupation, recreation, and dreams.
Right.
Um, so if you just follow that sort of track, it's, if I were to meet you, I'd say, "Do you have a family?" I'd start with a
Exactly.
simple
And that
question.
opens, oh, sure, I have a son, blah, blah. Yeah, exactly. It opens
And
up a
then
whole
if you
treasure trove of information.
Yes, and then take step number two. The next question is embedded in the last answer. So tell me about your son.
Exactly.
Instead of going, oh, great, because how we fail in these conversations is we miss the opportunity to. The theory is that if you say, oh, I've got a son, you have tacitly invited me into a little piece of your life. And I
Mhm.
think most people are really anxious about getting intimate, and I'm not talking, what I'm
Yeah.
saying, a little bit more,
Personal.
intimate's the right word,
Yeah.
and they feel, whoa, 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 you're stepping over a boundary. But if in
Right.
fact I said, tell me about your son, what is he, tell me where he is in his life path, career path, man, we're
Right.
in. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. That's great. Let's give the folks at home an overview of the book. What will they find when they crack open the covers?
Hopefully, I opened with a pretty vulnerable sharing of my personal journey. I have struggled with insecurity, which I think is the human condition. I'd like to think it was, it's pretty universal, and 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 how I often felt inadequate and apart from people. I'm a big Brown fan. Big, I can say that's a lot of B's. A big Brene Brown fan, and she has said that vulnerability is the ultimate act of courage, which I really appreciate because if we are to connect with anyone, we have to share something of ourselves with them because that's what we're getting. So I open with a pretty strong explanation of my journey around how did I wrestle some of the demons of insecurity to the ground, and then immediately I try and, if you just read the first chapter, heck, read the first 3 pages, hopefully you might identify something about yourself. We talk about time of possession as in sports. Um, Right now, I'm doing about 85% of the talking, which makes me anxious because I do ultimately believe that 50-50, like a tennis match, you hit the ball, I hit the ball, but you're interviewing me, so I think I'm
A
okay, right?
different beast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If we were doing a podcast, I would never have talked as much as I have. In other words, what I'm going to pay attention to is, we call it time of possession. In
Mm.
this conversation, did I take more than 50% of the airtime? And because what I know, a lot of people just talk and talk and talk and talk, and they've got 90% time of possession, and then you make no connection there. So that's the first chapter. And then we start working on really specific tools and head sort of the apex are the 10 core skills that I think if you can learn them at some level, you can be just a fantastic questionnaire and have the fantastic ability to create connections, which then I loop back to this idea. Almost everybody wants to be seen and heard. It's universal. I want to be validated. I want to feel like I matter. I want to feel like what I say matters, whether it's as a child or all the categories as a human being. And sort of the crowning notion for me is, if we could all get better at this, I think the world would be a better place, and we'd all feel more a sense of belonging, and rather than that intense alienation that we feel when we've kind of massacred a relationship, or you can't talk to your kids for a year, or you have a really meaningful fight with a partner. And so it starts macro, gets very tactical, and then hopes really really macro that this matters, you
Yeah,
know.
it does matter, and these are very important life skills. Many social scientists will say to you, communication is the relationship, that you don't really have a relationship unless you're communicating. So let me ask you this about the book title. Why did you call it Why Bother Asking?
um I thought, if I'm going to write about a book about questions, wouldn't it be good if I started with a question? It seemed intuitive to me because, I looked at all the competing books in the space, and they all 10 keys to be a better communicator, 13 ways to, have the best, 19 ways to be able to have small talk at everything. And I'm like, that begs the most important question of, it is about, why bother asking? Well, because what you'll get from it. And hopefully it was, I mean, it felt on brand, if to start to title a book on questions with a question. Yeah.
I agree. I agree. And it's a great question. Why bother asking? Why are you asking that question? What are you hoping comes from the communication? What are you hoping comes from the response? I think it's
Bingo.
perfect. The name of the book is Why Bother Asking? Unexpected Keys to the Kingdom of Connection, written by Peter Parnegg. It is an insightful book, and the author shows us how asking the right questions can unlock deeper connections, both in business and in personal life as well. Peter, thank you so much for joining me here today on Spotlight.
Logan, thank you for your time. I appreciate it enormously.
Thank you for your time, sir. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time, this time Until next time on Spotlight.